opinion pieces, provided they have solid research behind them. That's why I like Malin Baker. He's pretty good. He cuts it right down the middle. During Trump's first term, he didn't really object to Trump. He didn't get into the Trump is bad for all reasons kind of thing, and that's why I kind of liked him.
Okay,
he kind of looked at the policies and what was wrong with them.
Yeah.
But he's taken a stronger stand recently because he feels that the American policies are pushing a sort of an authoritarian sort of trend.
All right. It's welcome everybody to Talking Niagara.
Welcome everybody.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. It's Talking Niagara. It is Thursday, 24th of July, 2025, and it's interesting. So you listen to some of these short broadcasts. So that's
Well, they're quite good. There's a lot of really good stuff on YouTube, but if you start to look for stuff, for instance, every once in a while I'll scan Fox to see what kind of right-wing nonsense is coming out, but then YouTube thinks I like Fox, so it'll give me lots of Fox stuff. And that kind of thing.
And then you scan CNN, and then you get lots of CNN stuff.
Yeah, and I do that just to see where, pretty much where the right and the left positions are. I'm usually looking to see to contrast them, and also to see what stuff they're leaving out and what stuff they're adding.
It's amazing how you can actually you can contort the Facebook the Facebook, how do you call it, algorithm, because what happens is you go search on Google or Bing or wherever you want to do, go search anything. So go search, for example, a gadget you want to buy, and you've been thinking about this for 3 or 4 days, so you've done 3 or 4 days worth of thinking about it. And then last night you bought it off of Amazon or wherever you bought it, right? And you've now got the thing in your hand. And that's the only reason I mentioned Amazon, because now here it is. I have it right in my hand. And what is that? What is Facebook advertising for you? This thing that you just bought.
Yeah, and for months afterwards too. Yeah. So when I was searching for cars and different models of cars back in the fall there, ever since then, I've got all kinds of stuff from car lots and things like that about the different models that I was looking for.
Yeah. All right. Let's welcome everybody. Welcome Betty. Welcome Mike, and all right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome all around. So first
Good morning, Betty and Mike. How you doing?
Yeah. First one on the agenda is what Mike sent us in relation to Ministry of Environment, their response to Mike. They're saying Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks takes threats to the environment seriously. Priority is to ensure the protection of human health and the natural environment when responding to reports of pollution. The MECP's Environmental and Water Compliance officers follow the policy by engaging surface water experts and environmental scientists. Their role is to assess potential risk to the environment and human health. MECP responded to recent reports of city discolored and odorous water of oily, discolored, and odorous water being discharged into Welland River from the city of Niagara Falls stormwater infrastructure near Don Murray. The MECP's role is to ensure that this issue is corrected by the responsible party, and in the absence of an obvious source, the city of Niagara Falls has assumed responsibility as a stormwater sewer owner to clean up the material and investigate the cause of the discharge. The city retained contractors to maintain absorbent booms in the channel to contain the material and prevent further discharges to the Welland River. These contractors are responsible for cleaning up any accumulated material. The most recent cleanup was completed July 10th, 25, before the rainfall, in response to city material that had oily material that had accumulated in the boom area. No staining was observed on storm gates to indicate illicit dumping in the storm drains, and the city is investigating unapproved cross connections in their storm sewer system as a potential cause. So the MEC is inspecting industries in the area and continues to offer assistance to the city as it conducts its ongoing search. No sources were found during the inspection, and the MECP ensured that business owners understand their obligations under the environmental legislation to prevent the off-site discharge of materials from their properties. Should a responsible party be identified for the discharges, corrective measures will be followed in accordance with compliance policy. I'm aware that you have been attending the Public Information Center meetings that have presented options for sediment remediation, and our partners at Niagara Peninsula Conservation Energy have advised that scientists have determined the risk to wildlife in the creek is low and there is no risk of human health. Provided
anglers
follow the fish consumption restrictions in the guide to eating Ontario fish Ontario fish, yeah. In Ontario, all facilities are regulated with wastewater discharges or air emissions under the Ontario Water Resources Act and the Environment Protection Act must report any cases where approved operating limits have been exceeded. The MEC publicly releases the Environmental Compliance Report on the Ontario Data Catalogue. The annual Environmental Compliance Report includes information about steps taken by facilities to achieve compliance with environmental laws. Information on sewage, bypasses, and overflows can be obtained directly from the Region of Niagara on their website. As suggested in my previous correspondence, please contact them. All right. To further discuss your concerns about municipal development, to report any new environmental concerns, you can contact MECP, etc. Yeah, so there's the response that Mike received from MECP.
Yes, well, basically the mystery remains.
Yeah.
My hat's off to Mike, because I don't know if anything would have been done at all about this, or anyone would have been looking to see what was going on here. So Mike has actually sort of thrown back the curtain, and so they cannot ignore what he has observed and what he has put out there. They still haven't identified what the substance is, though.
Yeah,
that's a big problem for me, and they haven't determined the source of this, which is a big problem to me. Now, the big long letter sounds as if they're doing a lot, but actually, when you boil it right down, the only thing is really happening is contractors are putting booms in the river, sort of to mitigate what's happening.
Well, and my
conclusions that it's not. I'm wondering, because if they don't know what it is, how do they then know that it's not going to be a threat to the immediate environment? The risk is low, they said, but how determine that if they don't know what it is?
Well, Mike says this is a generic letter, something ongoing for 3 years plus, and it sounded to me exactly like that, just a generic, we're doing what we can letter.
Yeah, that sounded like that to me, with a little bit of personalized stuff, like you've gone to meetings and so on. But the problem, what I see here is I'm sure they'd like to forget this one, sort of put it to the side. But my problem here is this may be minor in their eyes, and I don't compared to all their other environmental pollutions. I'm sure they're going after the big fish, basically. But this looks like a little fish to them. But how many of these all over the place are happening? And if they can't identify, the biggest problem with me is identifying the source.
Yeah.
And so the city is doing their part. The environment people are sort of trying to find the source of it, evidently, from what they say here. But the fact of the matter is they haven't identified what it is. So they haven't. They said, what is it? Is this oily substance? Does it contain? Are there other things unseen among the oily substance? Anybody that's worked with H2S in environments where there's hydrogen oxide or sulfide, whatever, it's a poisonous gas. It's the stuff that smells like rotten eggs. If you smell it, you're okay. But if you can't smell it, you're in bad shape, because when it gets to be deadly, the concentrations cannot be smelled. You can't detect them. And that's the most dangerous thing. So there are things in here that may not be detected yet. I don't know the thoroughness of their investigation. How much have they taken water samples? Have they tested them?
The thing that actually bothered me, it's like, well, they found something that wasn't really, they've not found anything that has risen to really problems that impact human health. What I would expect to see in that regard is some scientific, there should be some scientific feedback in that. We found the following particles in there in these amounts. The recommended amounts that we should have for these types of things in any river or natural water area is X, right? So they should be able to lay down the chemicals and how much is acceptable.
But the thing is, they haven't identified the chemicals, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So how can they come to the conclusion that it's okay for human health, provided the fishermen go by the guidelines of how much fish they eat, if they don't know what's in the fish? Basically, what they're saying is, if you follow the rules, the angler rules, and you catch X amount of fish, you know that there's going to be toxic levels of there's going to be amounts of mercury and other things in them. So that's why you want to limit the amount that you eat coming out of the Niagara area. But they haven't really even identified what this is, and they're just sort of falling back on.
And without making any accusations, if there's higher levels of zinc or silver or something like that than is permissible, we should be looking at, how much zinc there is in parts per million in relation to the seawater, what is permitted in parts per million, how this compares to what's permitted.
But the problem is they have to identify what it is. Yeah, and they haven't.
Exactly.
So they just fall back on the old regulation. Look, just don't eat too many fish and you won't have a problem.
Yeah.
What if this is arsenic? It could be any amounts of things. So the troubling part of this whole thing, the form letter, which Mike has rightly described it as, is they've done a certain amount of things that they're supposed to do, try to identify the source, and but they haven't identified the source, and that's the big thing. So what they're banking on is they go to the industries around there, and they sort of read the riot act to them a little bit. Look, you can't dump stuff, but they don't know which one of them is dumping or where the source coming. And it could be an accidental source too. It could be a spillage or a leak or something.
Well, I'm less inclined. An accidental source is an accident is one of these things where you get it from, let's say, a month. It flushes through the system after a month.
No. If you have a problem with your systems and they are leaking and you don't know it, or there's some sort of byproduct.
Yeah, I accept that. But again, after a period of time, you still not, surely somebody will go around the back of the machine and go, "Hey, Mike, what's this oily substance, yellowy oily substance that's leaking out the back of the machine?"
Well, I tell you, when I worked at Welland Tubes there, the old plant there, they lost hydraulic. They had the old pipes underneath the concrete, so they were nearly impossible to fix because you would have to rip up all the old concrete. But they lost hydraulic oil at a very high rate. They had to keep topping it up, and of course that hydraulic oil was going into the ground, basically. And nobody knew where it went. Nobody knew where it was going to pop up. It was a kept secret, basically, because when the environmental people come in and test it around, they didn't find anything at all. But they didn't. Nobody told them, look, we're losing a lot of hydraulic oil. It might have been glycol, but I can't remember. I think it was hydraulic oil. But their old pipes and everything leaked so bad, and they were under concrete that it was more cost effective to just keep topping up the hydraulic oil. But that stuff had been leaking for years and years and years. Now nobody noticed it popping up outside the place, but of course they wouldn't, because it's all underground.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about that kind of thing happening here. In this particular case, it could just be.
Again, surely the answer there isn't just keep topping the frigging machine up. If it's using above the normal amount, surely it should be fixed.
Nope. Nobody came along and knocked on their door and said, and if they had, now here's the rub. If they had, they would have had to tear up a lot of the concrete flooring and the other places.
No. What I'm meaning.
Not only that, but it would have cost jobs. So if the ministry had identified it, the ministry didn't know any of this. But if the ministry had found it, then they would have had to close the place down and lost jobs. But again, so they would have probably found some other solution to mitigate it.
That's not what I'm talking about, Dave. Here, you knew, whoever knew that machine leaked hydraulic fluid. All right, why didn't they replace the machine?
No, I'm telling you, it was in the pipelines. The machine's fine. It was in the transmission of that hydraulic oil or glycol. I can't remember which one of the two that was. So that's where it was. The machine could be replaced 10 times and nothing different would happen. It was the transmission system. And you couldn't get at those pipes because the pipes were under concrete floors. And in order to fix it, you'd have to tear up the floors to get at it. Okay. I'm not even sure the ministry knew anything of this because it was a well-kept secret, not among the people that worked there. Everybody knew, but nobody was going to say anything that worked there. They knew that they would have to close the plant down and they wouldn't have a job. See what I mean? Now the place is closed, so it's no longer an issue. It's been closed for some time now, but so it's no longer an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's disturbing.
Yeah, and let's just say we don't know the source of it, and then that's the biggest problem I see. We don't know the sources of it. If we knew the source of it, we could take corrective action, but we don't. Are we sitting in a situation where this stuff will continue to be leaked into into the little channel there, and the ministry will just have to say, well, we don't know where it's coming from, so we can't do anything about it, except for putting booms. Are we expecting the city to hire contractors ad infinitum to set up a boom? That's only the surface stuff they're collecting too. So among the oily substance, as I said before, there could be things there that aren't detectable without thorough testing. You know, like chemicals and other things. The oily substance could be the least of the problems. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
and as for instance, when I was working on the coke ovens, they had this really noxious type of gas that came out of it. It was green and brown and all kinds of ugly colors. Now that was bad enough. So that was a health risk, but it was a minor one compared to the stuff that you couldn't see.
Yeah.
The stuff that you couldn't see was the stuff that was deadly, the stuff that could get into you and actually kill you, or cause your body to misfunction and so on. So we see here this oily substance. My problem is, what else is there?
Yeah. So you're saying that pipes within the concrete might be corroded. Is what your situation that you were talking about.
Oh, for the industries that are in Miri. No, I didn't suggest that at all. That was
I mean on the problem that you had, the pipes within the concrete were corroded.
Yeah, they were leaking, so they were old, and there was leak there. It was no one knew where it was, but in order to find it, you'd have to tear up the floors. A complete major. But that's going back to that. But in this particular case, they cannot identify. In our particular case, we're talking about here with the booms, like we have the city, and as I said before, like are we expecting the city to hire these contractors ad infinitum to put the boom up? So that's the oily substance. What I was talking about here is what else is there? You know, and what I said about the coke ovens, there was this noxious gas that you could see. It was a smoke. It was terrible, ugly smoke coming out of it. But that was the least of the problems. The problem was what you couldn't see. And so I'll bring that issue back to us. We see the oily stuff that's on the surface, but what else is in there? Has there been proper testing? There could be other chemicals coming out. Now, I'm pretty sure they've identified what each different industry does that can potentially pollute the area. And they probably have, if they've done their due diligence, have decided, well, there may be nothing here of extreme danger coming out of any one of these factories or plants. And the other issue so they may have done that due diligence. I'm not so sure. It doesn't say in the letter to Mike. They haven't said, okay, we've looked at all these different industries, the potential, and we find that most of them don't have anything of real danger that could be into the channel.
Again, on your hydraulic stuff, you know, and what you were talking about with hydraulic or whatever the substance was in your particular case, you wouldn't necessarily think about, you know, if you were producing, I'm going to be completely off target here deliberately. If you were producing shoes or something like that, and the types of chemicals were not consistent with shoes, but they were hydraulic fluids that were leaking from the shoe movement machine, if you get what I'm saying. You know, how you wouldn't necessarily associate the two, because this is not the type of thing that was associated with manufacturer shoes.
Well, if we bring that analogy right back to where we are now, what I'm suggesting here is if they had done their due diligence and gone to the potential fact, like anyone who discharges their stuff into the system, the industrial park there, and identify what they do and what equipment they use, they can sort of whittle down what potentially can go in discharged into that channel.
Yeah.
And if there is, let's say, if they do find hydraulic oil, and they'll find that this company uses machines that require hydraulics, that kind of thing. But in this particular case, if they've done that due diligence, but I would say that I don't know, they've taken some samples, I'm sure, and tested what it is, but we don't, like I said in the article, it doesn't say what they have determined it is. They just, but what they have determined though is that it isn't illegal dumping. What will happen is, and I've seen this too, where a company gets a contract to take away toxic waste. They fill up their tanker truck, and what happens is somebody goes someplace to an isolated catch basin and dumps it down there into the city sewer system. That happens. So they have determined that has not happened, they think, because they can't find evidence of it around any of the catch basins. But my issue here is the city now has to try to determine the overlap in their rain sewers and their other sewers, the sewers, the wastewater that comes out of the different industries there, and the city has to determine if there's an overlap there, if the rain sewers are mixing up with industrial sewage. Anyway, so Betty Zoom says,
"Oh, sorry, go
on. Pipe it is Dane everywhere." Well, can you read that better than me?
Pipelines.
Is that supposed to be pipelines?
Yeah, pipelines. Yeah, okay, it could be pipeline. City time on demand. City meeting time to demand answers. Yeah.
You're not going to get them though. That's the problem, and that's what's so frustrating about this.
And Mike says you have to go through the Freedom of Information to request the results.
Seriously?
Yeah. Why aren't they producing them? Why aren't they producing the results?
So, we've done the test. We've determined that it's not a serious problem from human health, but we can't tell you what it is.
Yeah. I need these on a chart. We couldn't even talk about them, with that. We'd need them charted. What's dangerous? What's acceptable?
Look, this should be public information, basically, because their freedom of information is an impediment to free speech, basically. What is the freedom of information there to protect? Why is that obstacle sitting in front of you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know.
This is like somebody X was murdered by a certain gun, and we can tell you that it was a bullet, but we can't tell you who the gun belongs to.
Yeah.
You have to go to Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. But that would determine just the results of those tests could give you hints of where this might be coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, and basically what he's saying, that way they will charge a lot to scare me away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, moving on. Niagara police and riders are sounding alarms about the numbers of motorcycling deaths in the Niagara region.
Well, I can tell you, I was just talking to a biker yesterday when I went for a walk right after the show. And so I was kind of admiring his bike, and we were both trading stories about about, because that was I talked to him right at the corner of Thorlestone and Dorchester, where a young man had lost his life just a few weeks ago, and there's been 10 deaths, so there's been an uptick in deaths.
Yeah.
But
And the
one of the problems,
youngest being a 16-year-old kid.
Yeah, they shouldn't let a 16-year-old ride a motorcycle anyway, if you ask me.
Well, he was possibly a rider on it, He was
possibly, but like I didn't look at that incident. But there's a number of issues here. Number one, distracted drivers. You're on a motorcycle. You don't get much extra chances. If you're in a fender bender with another car, when somebody's distracted by their phone and sort of wanders into your lane, and you get a brush of a little fender bender, right? Nobody's hurt. The cars are crunched. But if it was a motorcycle involved, that person could be dead and was seriously injured.
Yeah.
Give distractions. I don't know. Yeah. So I would say that.
Yeah, I give them all extra room. I also hang back from motorbikes because there was always the one thing. It's never happened in front of me, but I'm always conscious that if a motorbike rider is in front of me, I should have additional room to stop.
Yeah, that's defensive driving, but a motorcyclist has to be extra defensive driving.
Yeah.
So you are considerate to motorcycles, but I can tell you this from my own experience, and I told this to the guy. We both talked about how drivers just don't see you.
Yeah.
Even like I remember coming up Thorlestone Road, and there was Food City in there, whereas Camiso's is now, and there was no light at that particular entranceway into that plaza. And I'm coming along. Luckily, I wasn't going too fast because it was a nice day, and I really did feel like opening up the throttle. But there I'm putting along about 50 kilometers an hour, not very fast, just enjoying the day. I see a pickup truck, and the guy looks right at me coming out of that plaza. He looks directly at me, and he pulls out. I lock up my brakes, and I stop. My front wheel stops about an inch from his door, and I yelled at him. I says, "What the fuck you?" And he said, sorry. He says, "I didn't see you." And I said, "I saw you look right at me.
Yeah,
you looked right at me." And he says, I didn't see you. It just didn't register." And anyone who knows anything about motorcycling, that is an issue. People are looking for cars. And subconsciously, a motorcycle sometimes does not register as a car.
I've never ridden a motorcycle, but I have ridden a bicycle, and I have noticed exactly the same thing with bicycle. I saw this guy, and and when I was riding bicycles, I would ride at 30 miles an hour. I'd be pretty damn fast on the bicycle, and I noticed that people would look straight at you, then pull out. Right. What I would do was pull out into the next lane out and go around them. And then they're shocked that a bicycle can overtake them.
Yeah, but that's probably a good example. But what happens with motorcycles is people, like I said, don't really even register.
Yeah.
Also, people think if you're riding your motorcycle, and this is very important for motorcycle riders, to keep close to the center line, because what a lot of drivers will do, particularly if they're late or something, will try to crowd you off. So they'll try to go around and drive right beside you because there's enough of the open lane. So what you have to do is put yourself close to that center line to dissuade them from trying to just nip around you real quick.
Yeah.
Because that's a source of a lot of accidents.
One of the things I'm
luckily, according to this article, there is a lot less alcohol-related deaths. That used to be the big thing. When I had my motorcycle license, 50% of all motorcycle deaths involved alcohol. and 50% of all motorcycle deaths happened without another driver. They were alcohol related, and they were with no other vehicle around them. So they're either going too fast and pissed. Basically, that happily has gone down a huge amount.
Yeah.
But the fact that distractions, I think, is the biggest order here. People, when they learn how to drive, are not told over and over and over again, be on the lookout for motorcycles or wheelchairs or something else. Because in your head, you're looking for trucks and cars, and subconsciously you don't register a motorcycle or wheelchair or like we found out the other day.
There's these new miniature type cars which are kind of wheelchairs being put, basically you put your wheelchair into a little buggy that's actually roadworthy. It has license plates and everything, and you drive it just like a car. It's a four-wheel, but basically it's a four-wheel motorized, ramped, souped up version of your disability scooter.
So
those are not.
So they've been involved in accidents lately.
I don't know, but I've seen people. There's one regularly goes down in St. Catharines in the town centre, and I've seen pretty close shaves relating to that, and I think to myself, oh my God, this guy's, brave guy for going out there, but people are just not looking at him.
So what do people do? They have to have lights on, something that makes them very visible. That's the problem with a lot of motorcycles. A lot of motorcycle guys like to dress in black, have a black motorcycle. Black is not a good color for a motor, for you as the pretty much as the driver. You should have something like, particularly your helmet should be kind of white rather than black. If you can get another brighter color for your leathers, that's a good idea, because you have to be visual. To take a motorcycle safety course is very good. But what happens lately, I don't know about this year, but in previous years, people of my age, guys that are in their 50s or 60s, retired guys, will buy big Harley motorcycles because they want to be weekend warriors. And they go around, they buy black leathers, they buy a black Harley, they drive around and they rum. So they kind of are weekend warriors, like pretend bikers, but they don't know how to ride. They're 60 years old, they retired, and they buy a hog. But they don't know, they don't have, they can ride enough to get their license, but they haven't got enough experience out there. When they try to keep up with other experienced motorcyclists, they get into trouble. Yeah. And so in the recent years, a lot of the lion's share of the guys that were dying on bikes were older guys that didn't have a whole lot of history of riding bikes. And
well, the weekend driver is always a problematic one anyway. It's the weekend rider or driver is always a problematic one anyway. You see, in some cities, I've seen people who I kind of look, I've driven around and kind of go, well, you're a weekend driver because you're just not paying attention. You just don't know what the rules of the road are.
Or you see me like Sunday drivers. Yeah, but this is a totally different case. These guys, they are aware of the roads. It's just that they don't have the hand-eye coordination and they don't have the experience. And I think what happens is they get in them with a bunch of other guys riding, and they're more experienced, and the guys take some pretty sharp corners or accelerate, and they want to be part of that, and they don't have the eye-hand coordination and whatever. But it's older guys that are buying big hogs and stuff that were the ones that were dying. And sadly,
Oh, no.
because
Is there anything in here about the types of people that were dying? I didn't see.
no,
anything.
they don't go into it. But I brought that up because that was, I think we brought that up last year when we discussed motorcycle deaths as well. That it was in that particular article there was a high proportion of the motorcycle accidents happening with kind of like older guys that got bikes late in life.
The one example that they did show about age was that 16-year-old who died, but they didn't tell about what the circumstances were.
Among motorcycles and youth is a big problem too, because young men tend to be more reckless.
Yeah.
But they have quick eye-hand coordination, but being young, they feel they're invincible, and that's the thing. But the fact that alcohol is being removed from a lot of the considerations for accidents these days is a good thing. But my other thing is distractions. Nowadays, we have drivers from all over the world who have different ideas of courtesy in the roadway.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, in places like Italy or something like that, you jammed as many people as you can into a 2-lane road, but every motorcyclist or everything knew what that was like, that environment. Now, so we have a lot of new drivers, and the biggest factor I see lately is distraction among drivers. You know, how many times are you taking a left-hand turn and you can't, and there's an advanced light and the person in front of you won't move and you have to honk the horn just because they're on the phone. How many times I've had drivers pull out in front of me that came to a stop at a stop sign, but then took off without looking. All they're doing it is mechanical because they're watching the phone. So distractions are a big thing. So the biggest effort a motorcyclist can do is be the most offensive driver of all time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is up to us to be more careful. But like I say, they don't get a second chance, motorcyclists. You're going to get hurt bad or die if you get in an accident. You know what I mean? So it's suggested in this article to go get some defensive motorcycle training. And I'll put that out there for everyone who has friends with motorcycles. Get some defensive training. Go to a course. You have to be able to look everywhere. Eyes behind you. Your mirrors are good at all times. You look behind you almost as much as you look in front of you, and you try to interpret what's coming. If you see a guy wandering sort of in their lane because they're looking at their phone, that's okay if they wander a little bit and they clip another car. Okay, that's not going to be a big deal, right? So there's a fender bender and everybody's yelling. But if that car wanders a little bit because the guy's on his phone and a motorcyclist is coming the other way, it could be a fatality, but it's going to be much serious an accident otherwise.
Yeah.
So the motorcyclist has to be aware of his surroundings all the time and try to read what's coming at them. If they look at the type of traffic that's coming, if they could, a truck, maybe another car, somebody trying to get around the truck, and they might try to get around the truck just as you come up to that truck. So that's, I would say, the most important thing is try to get some safety course if you own a motorcycle. Also, be very visible. Make sure that your helmet's white or your leather.
Actually, I would say you need to put reflective strips on your helmet.
Well, that's good at night, but during the day is the biggest problem for motorcyclists because, as I said, people have this sort of subconscious idea that a bike is not a car, and quite often the colors that bikers like blacks and grays and things like that, sort of blend in. So what you want to do is stand out.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking get a chartreuse bike and get a chartreuse motorcycle jacket and have a rainbow colored helmet. No, I don't.
Why not? I love rainbow color. No, I know what you're saying. I know where you're coming from. All right. Yeah. Okay.
What else we got? I think we pretty well done that one.
Moving on. Democrat. What's her name? It was Mrs. Woman. She's
Alexandria.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez basically has been criticized after voting against cutting U.S. and Israel U.S. aid from Israel's drone program.
Well, I've never been a fan of her anyway, but here is a situation where she looks like a real hypocrite, because she has jumped on the Gaza thing and said how bad it is. But when it comes down to actually voting on something that would make substantial difference, that would signal to Israel that they don't support it, she voted for it. Now, I'll give it to you. Let's not be judgmental. So here is first of all, this is her choices. She said that the armaments they're going to that Congress is approving are for the Iron Dome. So her argument is this is not an offensive weapon, so I'm going to vote for it. But clearly, she does not want to disturb or upset the Israeli lobby.
Yeah.
So that's her excuse. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of in this thing. One of the things you have to remember about this is that a lot of what she was voting for, what the vote here was for, was actually an amendment to the bit to an amendment, to what was going on. All right.
Well, so basically they're going to dump a lot of weaponry. So her like she's been called a hypocrite, and I think she is here. She's been called a hypocrite because she's been using the Israeli thing to get the Gaza thing to get attention. But when it comes right down to doing something about it, she decides not to do it.
Yeah.
And her excuse is, these are not munitions for destruction. These are defense munitions. But if you really want to send Israel a message, right, you cut off their munitions. And another object to this is, why aren't they buying their own?
Yeah.
Basically, why aren't they buying their own? And that is the big issue with people who brought up the bill, like Thomas Massey. And this was brought up by Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is much more honest than AOC in this particular case. We see AOC as an image of the far left progressives, and you see Marjorie Taylor Greene as a personality of the far right issues. But in this particular case, Marjorie Taylor Greene is voting on her humanitarian conscience, and AOC is playing politics.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is about this, it was, as I said, it was a vote about an amendment. So even if she had been opposed to this is a vote against an amendment. So even if she had been in favor of the amendment, let's count it. So the vote that happened was 422 to strike down the amendment versus 6 to actually favor the amendment. So if that had been 421 to 7, it wouldn't have made any difference to the result anyway.
No, but it is a clear message.
Yeah.
It's a clear message. When it comes down to really doing something about it, she chickens out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she doesn't get that. She's pretending to. Now, Robert Massey, who is a Kentuckian, he is a Republican. He's hated by Trump, and he's hated by the other Republicans because he likes to tell the truth, and he is not pulled around by the nose by the Israeli lobby. That vote, that huge vote, in any other situation, you would never get a spread like that. What happens here is almost unanimous, which tells you, which is an indication of the powerful control the Israeli lobby has over Congress.
Exactly. Yeah, and 422 to 6 is absolutely massive. If we were to, and I don't even know why, and part of me says I don't even know why this is a news article, because we're talking about one person voting in an odd way in 430 people.
Well, it is very important because of the who did it. They know that they know.
I know.
I'm sure that there's lots of the Democrats and Republicans would like to have changed their vote, but they can't because they'll get primaried and they'll have the Israeli lobby all over them. They see what happens to Thomas Massey. They throw millions of hundreds of thousands of dollars at Israeli lobby trying to besmirch him, and they fund his opponents. As a matter of fact, they called him once an ally of the Ayatollah, an ally of Hamas and Ayatollah. Basically, his concerns are that they fund too many wars for other people. And in this particular case, he, even after the first year of the war, he says, I am opposed to the amount of civilians that are getting killed. As soon as he said that, of course, he's called an anti-Semite or as a dummy that doesn't understand what's going on. In this particular case, AOC has shown her true colors, which is she's afraid of the Israeli lobby, and there's no way she's going to not vote for that. Now, she's pretending it's because of defensive weapons. But if you're going to send a message that the United States is paying enormous amounts of money for Israel to conduct their brutal wars.
You'd have made that vote 421-7.
Yeah, the vote doesn't really matter, but it was very symbolic.
Yeah.
And it was out there. And AOC has got a lot to answer for. And what's that body of people, the socialist group, they were saying Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA. They have found her to be hypocritical. They have stated that she is just using the Democratic issues to gain prominence in the press. But when it comes down to actually doing something, she turns her back. So she does not take a whole lot of money from the Israel lobby. She does usually have a lot of grassroots supply during her campaign. But what she doesn't want to do is irritate the Israel lobby, and that's very, very clear. Last year, the DSA pulled their endorsement of Ocasio-Cortez after she hosted a panel on anti-Semitism that the group said conflated anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and condemned boycotting Zionist institutions. So Zionism we find is the real problem. And if she's wishy-washy and jelly-backed when it comes down to saying something, but then conflating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, no, she's never been a favorite of mine. No, I think the best thing to do is vote her out next election and find somebody that really says what they mean. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so
particularly now when we are very, very clear what's happening there, and they're making that kind of a vote, and this is she could make a statement because she's high profile, she's in the news all the time. She could make a clear statement, but she chose to chicken out.
Yeah.
So,
And again, that's kind of, as you say, shows her character or lack thereof.
Yeah. Talk is cheap.
Yeah. Okay. So moving, and especially on a vote that really doesn't mean anything.
Well, yeah. And the vote was held the vote was held, and everyone knew what the results of the vote was, but you could put a stand up there. You could stand the whole thing that the vote came up, and it was going to get into the papers, and people like Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and AOC could definitively show what what was in their heart.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, as a nutcase as she is, has some moral fiber more than AOC. I'll take Marjorie Taylor Greene and her nutty policies over AOC any day.
Yeah. Okay. Lynch and Barber, the Crown is seeking 7 and 8 years for these convoy leaders.
This is outrageous. This is absolutely outrageous. They want to put Tamara Leach and Barber in jail for 7 and 8 years, respectively. Outrageous. This was a protest. It may be a protest that went awry, but it was a protest. The Crown is looking for scapegoats. They want to dump on these people. They want to make an example of them. Come to Ottawa and do a protest, and you're going to be thrown into prison. We're talking about the authoritative state that's happening in the States right now. This is a misuse of the legal system, if you ask me, if they get even one day. This was a protest. It was a legal protest. It got out of hand.
Well,
they organized it. They started it. They also had a code of conduct, which they issued to all their truckers, that you're supposed to be polite, blah, 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 blah. Okay. But they were in no way in control of all those truckers at all that time.
But Dave, the one issue about this is, I accept to a lot of what you're saying. The one issue about this is that a protest is coming to Ottawa for the day, perhaps arguably for the weekend, to make their point real hurt. Come Monday morning, that convoy should have broken up and should have gone back home.
Where are the rules of protest that say that has to happen?
No,
where are the rules? There is no ordinance in the Ottawa city.
I grant you that. You make a fair point. But I favor all demonstrations, and I think that generally leaders of demonstrations should not be jailed for things. But the only real argument about the real argument isn't about the fact that there was a demonstration or the fact they're right to hold the demonstration. I think it seems to stem around the fact that it went on for more than a day.
And how are you going to dump that on Leach and Barber?
Yeah, and you raise a good point.
Also, it went on for 3 weeks because they wanted results, and they went there to have the business done. What is missing here is the miscommunication with the Ottawa police force and everyone else.
Yeah,
they came to demonstrate, to plug up the roads, to make a very good point. I disagreed mostly with whatever they said, but I agreed with their ability. I thought it could be organized better. I thought the original idea was to have the truckers park and there and make a demonstration, and then go to a collection point outside the city, and the people themselves would come into the city and demonstrate.
Yeah.
So this idea of the Crown prosecutor asking for 7 and 8 years for leaders of a demonstration. Now, these people started the demonstration, asked for the demonstration to happen as because they felt their democratic rights were being infringed upon. They felt the government was not operating correctly. We know that there was 5 different segments of this demonstration. Remember, it happened for a couple of days, a year or two before that, for a different reason. Now, this thing got out of hand, of course, because people enraged came to Ottawa. But Leach and Barber in no way were conspiratorial people who will, criminal types, want to overturn the government. And that business about, anyway, so there was different aspects of this. yeah, the thing got out of hand, and maybe they should be taking some responsibility for it, for launching the whole thing without better planning.
Yeah.
But that's all I can see, is they didn't anticipate how this thing was going to play out. I don't think in their wildest dreams they thought Tamara Leach or Barber or any other organizers thought this was going to get out of hand. This is a clear indication to me that the government is looking for scapegoats.
Yeah.
Problem here was people, it was the liberal government and how they were governing. And that was the problem. That was the issue. And anybody that had a beef with the government came that day. I watched a global news guy went around for an hour or so with a camera in the first week or so of the demonstration. He found almost everybody had a different opinion of why it was there. Most people approved of it being there, and people had their own ideas of what the government should be doing and what mistakes they were making, but they were well behaved. And of course, the press zeroes in on the dumb people. There was one guy with a Confederate flag, and it made headlines. But all the people the Sikhs who came to cook and provide food for the demonstrators, how many times did they make the press? Maybe on the third or fourth back page, because the press was part of this, was because it was a racist thing. So if you put blacks and Sikhs in there, well, then you can't play that game in the press, can you? You know, the government characterized it as kind of white nationalism, racist, misogynist. But when the Indigenous people of Canada were the ones that led the demonstration into the city, how can you make those claims? So here it's outrageous. They're looking for a scapegoat, and they're clearly saying, the prosecutor, the Crown is clearly saying, if you dare come to Ottawa and you dare demonstrate against what the government's doing, we're going to throw you in jail.
Yeah, I'm generally, I've been taking a the opposite viewpoint quite deliberately through this course. As you know, I've said I don't like the idea of jailing these people.
No, as a matter of fact, Tamara Leach and Barber are good, solid citizens.
I think there's been a massive waste of money here. In this.
It has been. It could have been. They could have been say, look, you screwed up on your protest. Next time you do a protest, you better be better organized. But remember, this thing grew with a life of its own, and their particular issues with the government and their group were not the complete issues that everyone else had when they came. Some people came there just to hate Trudeau, F Trudeau all over the place. Yeah. Some people came with the earnest idea that they were going to try to make a good message, and that was Barber and Leach. These people are not violent. They do not have are head of organizations that are conspiratorial against the government. This was a peaceful protest, and it had rules and ethics that they devised. There was a code of conduct. The truckers would show you the code of conduct they got when they notified that they were going to be among them. A lot of the protest was supposed to happen for a couple of days, and the trucks were supposed to disembark in them after that. It was the Ottawa. If you really want to come down on somebody for allowing this thing to get out of hand, you come down on the Ottawa police chief, who had to resign quickly in disgrace because he couldn't handle it. He was poorly organized and too poorly communicated to everyone. This poor communication.
Okay, so here's the question: how many thousands have we spent prosecuting these people?
Millions.
Pardon me?
Millions.
Yeah, millions, yes. And now you're going to be spending $25,000 putting these people in jail for 30 days.
30 days? They're asking for 7 and 8 years.
Oh, 7 or 8 years. Okay, that's 125,000 a year.
Yeah. But the whole idea is preposterous. It's cruel. Whoever this crown prosecutor is a Nazi.
Yeah.
What's she doing there?
8 years. Yeah. Sorry, you said it was 8 years. Why I got that month thing? I don't know. Even a month is too much.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Anyway, we're over time. I found this
That's $1 million in keeping them in prison.
But it's much more hideous that there were. It doesn't matter if it was $1 to keep them in prison for a whole year. It doesn't matter if it was 10 cents or $1. The issue here is they're removing a person from their freedom. They're taking their freedom away.
Yeah.
For trumped up charges. Remember that word, trumped up, because it is a sign of authoritarianism happening here. The clear message being by the crown, dare to protest and you will be hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And as you say, we're over on time.
Yes, I'd just like to point out that the IOC thing brought the Gaza thing up, and her hypocrisy in this doesn't surprise me one bit. But we can't be hypocrites about it. We have to keep it in mind that this is continuing to happen. Western governments are coming up and speaking up, as they have done prior to this, but nothing has happened because Netanyahu is the boss. He can do whatever he wants because, as we see by that vote, 422-6, he owns Congress. The Israeli lobby owns Congress, and he knows he is the boss. He doesn't have to listen to Trump. He doesn't have to listen to the international community. And unfortunately, the outrages that are going on there will continue. The starving children will continue. They're trying to jam the whole population into Rafah, 2 million people. They've lost 5% of the population already in deaths. We cannot even count the number of children that were maimed with no eye, no arms, going on trauma for their entire life. Look, Satan has to come and get this guy because Netanyahu, because he's competing with the devil for atrocities, and I don't know. Keep that in mind. Don't forget Gaza. Seems like the rest of the world likes to talk about it, but won't do anything about it. Without further ado, I bid you adieu.
Thank you, Dave.